for you guys. Here we go. Everything SVM. The second one of the day. All right. Go ahead and tweet that out. Everybody who's tuning in, welcome. Thanks for coming again. I had a show this morning with my friends from Soon, and now we've got Omar, who's in Singapore, and Tristan, who's also in Singapore. You guys already know Omar if you've watched the show before. He's the founder of Mantis. They built a really cool product that just shipped mainnet a little while ago. We can talk. I'll let Omar talk a little bit about that. And then Tristan is the founder of Zeta Markets. Before we get like a little deeper in the introductions, just a recap for people who are maybe tuning in for the first time. This show, Everything SVM, it's about the Solana virtual machine, and it's meant to be a forum for people who are building this space, doing kind of new innovative things with like network extensions or roll-ups, or just like taking the Solana virtual machine and experimenting and innovating with it to talk, be a forum for open source software, sharing ideas, and just generally educate people about what's going on. Tristan's been on my podcast before. We've talked a couple times about what he's working on. Very cool, cool ideas born in the last bull and the bear, with a lot of traction and some pain that's caused them to kind of innovate and create something really cool. Before we get into Tristan, Omar, you want to just like give a quick shout out about Mantis and you, and then we'll go into the show.
Yeah, sure. So, Mantis has really evolved, I think, recently, but we are essentially an SVM L2 that is essentially dedicated to best execution, initially for spot trades. So we have a solver network that fulfills orders on Solana and cross-chain. More recently, with all this AI stuff happening, that everybody, like, getting a lot of inbound for usage of our SDK, which lets people do like HFT style spot trading on Solana. So I think that's really exciting, and we're excited to see, Mantis sort of get used as the execution layer for a lot of different AI protocols, AI agent protocols. So yeah,
We'll have to talk about that more. Like Omar and I haven't even caught up since before Christmas, and we didn't really get to talk about that. I saw some tweets about AI agent stuff coming out of the Mantis account. So, and then Tristan, like, yeah, just quick, a little bit of your background, and I would love to like have you just share with folks kind of where you started from a product and technology perspective, and then where you are today.
Yeah, sounds good. So I've been around Solana for quite a while now. I think we got started in early 2021. So one of the first builders on Solana when there was nothing there but pretty much Radium and Serum. And Serum was actually kind of the inspiration for us to start building our product. We wanted to build an options exchange back in the day and couldn't get it to scale on Ethereum. We started writing some contracts and realized the gas prices and the kind of compute units that we would get would just not work for our use case. So we started building on Solana. We took what Serum had built and we basically extended that for derivatives. So we ended up building all the kind of margining and leverage and liquidation framework around that, which was pretty cool. We ended up pivoting away from options, I guess 2 years into that journey, because options are just incredibly hard to get liquidity. Very few sophisticated actors who can actually trade them. We just didn't find like crazy product market fit. And so we moved to perps, which we think is just like a fantastic product. It lets you go long and short any kind of asset that you want with leverage, which is what people love to trade on most exchanges. And so we continued building that out, and it's done pretty well. We've got a fully on-chain order book, one of, if not like the first one to actually build that and pioneer that. And then we ran into some congestion issues this year with Solana, with the kind of block space getting more filled up, with priority fees going higher. It's harder to be competitive, I think, with a fully on-chain order book when you're competing with a massive global network with everyone building NFTs and AI agents and whatever else is going on there. And so that kind of motivated us to move to essentially a network extension where we can run some of the order book computations in this ZKVM environment off the main chain, and then we can basically like 100x or 1000x our throughput and reduce latency. So yeah, just trying to increase bandwidth and decrease latency, essentially, like we all are. And yeah, the whole goal there is to build something that is basically like a HFT trading platform. You should be able to trade perps. It should be very liquid. It should be basically like instant transactions, and that will create the best trading experience.
What I mean, you guys aren't live quite yet, right? Like you're in testnet phase,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm curious to like, there's been a lot of improvements, on on mainnet, and
Mhm.
has anything changed for you guys as far as the need, or is it still like as great as it was before? I'm just curious.
Yeah, still is great. Like I think Solana has definitely pushed out. Like obviously, stake weighted quality of service was a big one that they pushed out. Like our platform and Jupiter and everyone else was basically unusable. Call it 6 months ago, when we had just transactions being dropped out of the blue. So thankfully, stuff like that, even though it is somewhat of a centralizing force, people could argue, definitely helped Band-Aid fix some of the problems. I know they are, like, having talked to people who are on the core engineering team or kind of other teams that are contributing, they are fixing the network stack and other issues there, which I think is extremely good. And thankfully, the stuff that we're building still benefits from that. So since we use Solana as the DA layer, any improvements to throughput and predictability of fees, I think, was a big issue before. It used to be completely non-deterministic. It's like, oh, I'm going to pay a really high gas fee, but this other guy in the other thread ends up paying a very low gas fee. He gets through. I don't. It doesn't make any sense. But I know they're working on a new scheduler. Essentially, I saw some of the guys talking about. That will be a big improvement. I'm very excited for that, and we still benefit from that. But I think I get asked this question a lot. People are like, if FiDancer comes, is your thing basically irrelevant? And I don't think that's the case. The biggest thing that we're trying to do is reduce latency. And at the end of the day, our model is quite different. Our sequencer almost doesn't, like, the concept of blocks doesn't really exist in our world, I guess. Everything is streaming. You're just firing transactions off, and they're getting processed, one at a time, essentially instantly. With a block-based model, which is, I guess, Solana's L1, you have these discrete 400 millisecond blocks. With FiDancer and multiple concurrent leaders, they're maybe going to get down to 200 milliseconds. But we're trying to get down to 5 milliseconds or lower, which is essentially where, like, Binance is 20 milliseconds, a bunch of other big centralized exchanges 20 milliseconds. So we need that order of magnitude improvement, and I don't think that's going to come through like FiDancer, although FiDancer will bring a lot of other benefits.
Interesting. Yeah, walk me through the architecture, because it's not. It really is more like an extension, and it's not just like a fork of Solana, right? Like you guys built something new,
Yeah,
or did you?
correct.
Yeah,
We're
right.
not just
Yeah.
like a net where we just take Solana, we fork it, we run it with like a private set of validators, essentially. Yeah, it's a complete different, like, rewrite. Um, if I was to explain it in simple terms, I guess how it works is we just run all our, like, smart contract logic and exchange logic. We actually don't use a VM, so that's maybe the controversial thing. I know it's like a SVM podcast here, and we're all talking about the SVM, but we actually don't use a VM, which is you might think a bit of a weird decision, but that kind of removes a lot of the constraints in terms of account limits, in terms of CU limits. We're actually very, very flexible, and I think some of the people that I have talked to really like the fact that we're going down that model. The thing that we do trade off a bit is wallet compatibility, necessarily with a Phantom or some of these infrastructure providers come to us and it's like, okay, you don't have this very nice schema that Solana has already laid out, and it's a bit more customized. But there are ways kind of around that we're working towards. But basically, like, to explain how it works, we have this runtime. People can essentially send transactions to it. We will process them. We will execute them. The results of that essentially will get serialized to this blob, and that will get stored down on the kind of Solana layer. So we're just using Solana as this kind of dumb DA database, I guess. But people can obviously do consensus and vote on the roll-up blocks that they want to see. And then our kind of roll-up full nodes on the network will read off the blobs on Solana's layer once they're actually confirmed, and they can replay those transactions or kind of confirm them on their end. So you can always kind of verify these things. And so that's how full nodes work. You also have light clients, which we're still building. That hasn't been done yet, but instead of downloading the full data, needing to like replay every transaction, we know the issue with full nodes is like you need a big chunky box to do it. Not everyone can do it. If you want to run a mobile wallet or a bridge, from your mobile phone or from a Raspberry Pi, it's not going to work. And so we're We're also have a design for light clients that is going to be getting built out. It should work. Some of the new Solana stuff that's coming out with the accounts lattice hash is actually potentially going to interfere with that. But we're trying to work with Anza through some of the solutions. But the nice thing there is you could run a very lightweight node. You can download all the block headers. All you have to do is basically verify the ZKPs there, and you can kind of verify the network in a very lightweight way. But that's a good way that we can get very high throughput and execution, not being bottlenecked by the main chain, but then still have this essentially like verification network effect as well.
Omar, I'm curious to hear what your take is on this, since you guys have done a roll too, but you went with a fork of Solana. Like, what kind of? I'm just not really sure even about the trade-offs. Like, I'd love to learn more from you guys about the trade-offs of like having a VM versus not. But what questions come to mind for you, Omar?
Yeah, so I get like, do you expect your users to have to bridge their funds to your network extension? So they will. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it's going to be pretty different. I kind of like to call it like a layer 1.5 because I feel like the bridging experience, or my goal at least, is to make it very seamless. With Ethereum, right, you have to wait for finality on Ethereum layer 1. It's going to take 15 minutes. On Solana, the finality is what, like 30 something blocks. Each block is like 400 milliseconds. Like, if you want to wait for finality, you probably could do it on a confirmed confirmation, but you really only have to wait max 15 seconds. And I think that doesn't feel too different to, just sending a transaction on Ethereum or something like that. So I feel like, you'd log in, and instead of putting it into the existing Zeta contract on Solana, you'd be bridging it up and depositing it, and you got to wait maybe 5 or 10 seconds. But I feel like for the median user, they probably don't care too much. That's my guess at least.
What if have you guys thought about like merging both the Zeta contract with the bridging contract maybe? Because like existing users, what's that process gonna look? I'm just like, I'm comparing this to how DYDX transitioned, and it was kind of painful, but I guess here you have an opportunity being on Solana, same chain, all the smart contracts can interoperate with each other.
Potentially. There's definitely, we haven't fully got our head around how that's going to work. I mean, we will have to migrate, all our market makers, all our liquidity, all our existing positions and users. I think, at least for the testnet, we're just going to go clean slate. We'll see with the mainnet. Hopefully we can just kind of get people to transition over. But yeah, you're right. Like, all this kind of TVL and capital and like existing deposits are in there. So I think we should be able to like one-to-one essentially like credit those over. But yeah, that's something that we probably have to tackle in a month or two.
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question. Like, man, building what you're building, I mean, we're kind of diverging from like the technical conversation, but just as an entrepreneur and like logistically managing a team that's got like a product on mainnet and then building this thing kind of at the same time is non-trivial. Like, how have you managed that as a team?
And that's why we've been like trying to hire and still hiring more for like people on the operations side. That's something that we were very lean in the early days. And then you realize not only is there the exchange operations, you've also got to run a company. You got to like pay people, worry about the legal side. All that kind of stuff is a big time drain. And then especially on the exchange side, it's not just. I mean, I'm kind of jealous almost of the Radiums of the world. All these people, Uniswap, they deploy this immutable smart contract. It just goes. It sits on the network, and you just kind of like call the endpoints, and it does everything. With a central limit order book exchange, you do have to have active liquidity. You have to manage market maker relationships. You have to worry about processing the order book. Think about downtime and stuff like that. It's a much more complex system. And then we have to do listings all the time. It's a bit harder for us to do permissionless listings when you're doing derivatives because you have leverage in the system. There has to be like risk factored into it. We can't just list any random shitcoin and then just kind of expect that you just have a permissionless pool and be on your merry way. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's not true full DeFi, I guess, but that's very hard to do when you're doing something that's a bit more sophisticated than just like a XYK swap.
Well, you bring up a good point about the operational side of the business, and every business has it. And I think especially in startup land and in crypto, people kind of gloss over that. I'm really lucky to have a fractional COO who we hired that used to be my co-founder at my last company. She was my COO actually there, and she started this like fractional COO service. So when we started ABK, I called her up and I was like, "Can I be your customer, please?" and she took us on, and she's just like, her and another friend who, so her name's Anya. And then I have another friend named Lauren Guritti who's been in crypto for a while, and she has a fractional like HR business. And so those two like handle everything on the operation side of the business. And it's like honestly, when you got a small team, we're less than 15 people. It's really, really helpful. And like, lets the engineers do their job. And then that's how I'm able to have a company where like, I'm the only non-technical person who works here. I'm the CEO and I don't do any of that stuff. But yeah, if you're out there listening to this as a founder and you just got funding or you've got like a small team with a little bit of revenue, you know, hit me up if you want to work with Anya, or find yourself some kind of like fractional COO person, because you really just don't need a full-time person to be like a ops lead for a long time, but you do need something. You need some infrastructure so you can just focus on the job.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with is just remote. Like honestly, if everybody was huddled around the same board like in Silicon Valley, like that would not there wouldn't be so much operational overhead. But I strongly agree with Alex that like managing all these different time zones and just like passing things from like one team to the next is like super critical. So yeah, I would super echo that
Yeah, it's
100%.
surprisingly hard. We actually made a big change at our company recently where we decided to be more in person. We were running remote for like the longest time. I guess like more of a focus on APAC, but still all across the world. And now we've kind of tried to centralize things a bit more. We actually got a proper office, moved out of the WeWork, got like a proper office that can fit everyone, and we've just centralized all our product and engineering essentially there, which is pretty good. A few guys across similar time zones, but I think there's just been like a massive improvement in productivity, and you don't have to have all these like communication barriers, jump on calls for everything. It's just like very simple and face to face, which I really like.
Yeah, I've been craving some of that lately too, but that's probably never going
We
to
did
happen
the
with my
same.
team.
We
We're
got
in
we
like,
have we have an office now in New York. We did the exact same. It's just like at some point it just has to be done. When you're
yeah.
doing things like launching a whole new SVM L2 while also having a product in production and migrating all the services over, like it's just impossible, I think.
Well, back to the technical stuff a little bit. Can you talk to me like a little bit? I'm curious about two things. One, I just want to understand the trade-offs better from like having a VM versus not. And then two, I want to talk about like your work with Anza, because to the extent that you can, because I literally just had Joe see Real Buffalo Joe on this morning. They've been doing some open source stuff with Soon SVM, and just want to learn more about that collaboration if you can talk about it. But yeah, let's start off with the VM stuff.
Is it a question for me or Omar?
Yeah, it's for you, Tristan. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. In terms of VM stuff, yeah, we figured we just need to get hyper specialized in what we do. And I think that was the nice thing, like building on Solana in the early days, is it was performant, but the bottleneck for us became the fact that we couldn't customize a lot of things. And it was very, like, I love building on Solana, but the frustrating thing was like when you're trying to build a very cutting edge, high performance exchange, it's very hard for you to make those design decisions. Sometimes we were like, oh, we want to support more markets, or we want to be able to like cross margin 50 assets. And as far as I'm aware, there's like limits of how many accounts you can pass in on Solana, and there's all these kind of constraints that you just had to kind of play around and work around, and you always had to kind of like hack something together or figure out how to work or yell at Tolly to put in an RFC that will get approved in like 6 months or something or other. So you just kind of couldn't move as fast as you necessarily wanted to. And it was good when they pushed through new network updates. You could kind of move a bit faster, but they're still working on multi-year timelines. And so for us, it was just like, yeah, having the full customizability, full flexibility to do things. We need to really be granular in what we can change and mess around with. And that was just annoying before, like trying to build something that's very high performance and then kind of being limited in some respects. So that's why we made that kind of trade-off. We think we have all the customizability now. And yeah, the downside is things will not be necessarily like interoperable out of the box with some of the existing things that support the Solana and SVM interfaces. So that's a bit painful, but we are working towards solutions to that. For example, the Sovereign Labs teams that we've worked with have a nice RFC essentially for some of their transaction message serialization. So one big problem is when you don't have the VM, right? It's like, how does Phantom or any of these other folks know what the layout of your transactions are, right? Like they just get this byte string and they're like, what the hell is this? I'm just going to show it to the user to blind sign. And it's like, if you're using your ledger and you're just like blind signing stuff, you have no idea what's going on. You're just getting shown this thing. There's no transaction simulations. It's just like, anyone could be like sending you malicious messages, or you could be getting like man in the middle, or something could be happening. And so, yeah, they came up with a really nice standard, essentially, which is this like universal wallet schema. And so it allows, when you have this string serialization of the bytes, you can actually have human readable stuff in there. So no matter what wallet you have, if it's Ethereum, if it's a MetaMask, if it's Phantom, if it's Backpack, if it's anything, probably even Ledger, we can actually pop up no matter what wallet this kind of universally serialized message, and anyone can kind of read that, and they can essentially like prove essentially what we're sending them is the correct thing and hasn't been spoofed. So that was a really nice one, which I think is good. I think people are also open to supporting more custom stuff these days. I think network extensions are catching on. Like I've talked to Armani a bunch, and I know they already support Eclipse, and we talked to them for a while as well. They were like very open to supporting new runtimes and kind of customized stuff. So I really like that some of these kind of new teams in the wallet space are more agile and willing to move on that. But yeah, those are some of the main trade-offs, I think, where we're mostly just forfeiting a bunch of composability and some of the nice tools that come out of the box, but we're getting kind of all this performance as a result.
Yeah, and then the second part of the question was just about Anza, the kind of work you guys have been doing with them. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been like super directly collaborating with them. I hope to do a little bit more in the future, to be honest. We've mostly been just like doing our own thing at the moment. But I think there's some nice collaboration, at least, that we've been doing with the Helios team, since we are building a data availability adapter, and that's like the first of its kind, as far as I'm aware, on Solana. That's something that we want to eventually open source and put out to the world. It's still kind of in build phase. It's like going to audit pretty soon, I would say. We're like 95% done, which is pretty cool. But hoping, at some point to make this a public good, and anyone who wants to build rollups on Solana can start using this contract or build on top of that, and start building rollups on Solana, which would be cool. And Helios has been super helpful. They've helped us with all the transaction landing strategies and how we can kind of optimize some of our payloads. And make sure that we use stake connections, for example. So in the blog that I wrote, Bullet, which is our L2 for Zeta, I outlined some of the numbers there. We were able to get, I think it was 100 transactions per second on Mainnet, which is pretty cool. So if you think that Mainnet does a couple of thousand transactions, we were maybe getting 100 of that. So maybe we were doing, call it, I don't know, like single digit percentage of entire network throughput, which is pretty cool. And 100 transactions per second, that's like 100 kilobytes per second. We were able to get something like 5,000 to 10,000 roll-up transactions per second through there, which we think is definitely more than enough to get us going off the bat. So that was my big worry, was like, everyone's doing Celestia DA, we're doing this weird thing, which is Solana DA. Is this going to be a bottleneck? Like, is this going to be a problem? But I think to get off the ground, it seems like it's fine for now. And then if Firedancer comes through and it 10x's the throughput of the network, like, we're just massive beneficiaries of that.
Very cool. That's super cool, and really cool to hear that you're going to open source that. Yeah, Omar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I hate to ask this because I know it's like sometimes annoying, but how do you see the future of your token and how it fits into the new system? And I saw a thread one of you guys had put out about your thoughts post TGE. So maybe, I don't know if that's something you want to discuss now or later.
Yeah, sure thing. So the current token, I guess, is very much like an application token. We've used it for incentives. We've used it for fee rebates on the exchange, which is definitely nice, and people use that. They stake it and they get rewards from that, and they get trading fee discounts. But I guess for some people, they see maybe like the scope is a little bit limited, and they want to see the bigger picture of what this can do. And so I think that's definitely our plan. We haven't finalized, I guess, how the token is going to be used in the layer 2, but I think there are some very obvious and easy ways to do that. One is obviously, using it as the gas token of the L2. I think that's a natural one. We're still kind of debating the pros and cons of whether we use Sol as the gas token, because I think that's a bit more aligned, and then it means people don't have to jump through the hoop of buying additional tokens. we are also doing pretty nice stuff, which is like gas subsidization, which I think helps with the whole usability of the chain. Unfortunately, we can't subsidize gas for 100% of people all the time, because then we probably just go bankrupt and run out of money as people spam the chain. The whole point of gas is basically as an anti-DDoS mechanism to stop people from just like abusing the compute on the chain. And so I think the model that we're kind of converging on is we're going to have this subsidization or paymaster setup, where if you onboard onto the rollup, your first 10 transactions or any transaction under, call it $10 or $1, we're just going to subsidize and we're going to pay for. But I think for power users, essentially, they will still be charged. And I think because they're using it so much, I think they'll be happy to do that. And I think that's where the token definitely comes in handy. I think that's why Sol has so much value, right? People actually use it as this digital computer on the internet. I hold a bunch of Sol now, obviously, because the price appreciates, but at the same time, like, I need to pay for transactions. And for example, the operating of our exchange, we actually need to go and DCA buy Sol to basically pay for our expenses, to land transactions on the network. So there is some kind of utility, and it's like a commodity essentially that people will go and buy this thing and use it for compute on the network. And then there's other bits that have network components. For example, there's going to be like a proven network that we're going to need to run. So people need to run these ZK verifiers. They're going to need to verify the kind of computation that's done on our order book. And ideally, we'd like a number of different parties running that. There's a non-zero cost to running them. So we understand, likewise with validators on Solana, which cost, bare metal servers and electricity to run, there would be cost to proving as well. So if we can kind of give out rewards and incentives for that, and likewise, if people are going to submit fraudulent things or challenge things improperly, we want ways to slash them. So I think being able to use the token for that is also helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think also something that immediately came to mind was vaults. Like, it would be really interesting if you guys had, there's no like hyperliquid vaults on Solana.
No, I don't think there are. I think some people are building these managed strategies, but yeah, that's actually on our roadmap, something we're building next month. We have one of our kind of trading guys building that, but it's such an obvious thing. We didn't have it on our previous product. I mean, people ran like discretionary strategies. They'd come in their Discord, they'd build a Python bot, and they'd do some funding rate arb. But we think if we can create that and build a vault out of it and let people just deposit it, get LP shares, it's kind of like JLP, I think is the best example of that. You become the kind of liquidity provided there. Likewise, we can do strategies like we can, if you short perps and you long the spot or just hold the spot collateral, you're doing this basis trade essentially. That's how Athena works, and they basically minted a stable coin off it, which earns 30+% APY on it. So I think, these are super cool things, and those honestly like excite me a lot. If we can build this thing, the perps platform gets a bunch of traction and we have high funding rates. There's, some people come into our Discord and they're like, your funding rates are too high. And I'm like, if you're thinking like a trader, like there's an opportunity to make like a lot of money here, if you could run the strategy. And I realize a lot of people maybe don't have the skill set to know how to code or to run, algorithmic trading bots, or to even like click trade and manage a strategy and manage their collateral properly. So if we can package that up into a simple strategy and people just deposit money into that vault, I think that will be pretty cool to see.
So we've only got a couple minutes left. I just want to ask, like, what's your timeline going? What's like the next 90 days look like? And then the second last question would be like, how can other people get involved? What do you need from the community to help?
Yeah, perfect. Things are moving pretty quickly. Like we just got through the holiday period, so it was a tiny bit slow for a week or so, but we're back, and we have this like private testnet essentially already out. We've already got a bit of people testing, which is good. Unfortunately, there's been like a few little like annoying bugs that we've had to deal with, which has been good that we've like found them out. So at the moment, it's slightly difficult to use, but we have some fixes basically all getting merged in this week. So I think next week it's going to be much more stable and much more usable. So our kind of call to action there is we've been just trying to engage people who either use the platform a bunch or are big traders or trade on kind of other platforms on Solana. So those kind of people who want to give good pointed feedback on, I guess, our platform and the usability of it, that would be really helpful. We only have it open to 50 to 100 people right now. So trying to keep it to like a small kind of group there, which is good. Public testnet should be coming out in a couple of weeks. I think we're targeting end of January. Timeline got pushed a little bit just because of these bugs that we've had, but everything is looking pretty good. We've built like 90%, I would say, of the core logic that needs to be in there. It's like our margin engine is done. We've got perps done. Borrowland is done. Spot is going to get started soon and should only take 2 weeks. We've done all our like black swan protection, so auto deleverage, insurance fund, all these kind of things that we needed to get in there. So the core exchange logic is basically done. The thing runs on testnet. We're just dealing with some issues on the sequencer. But yeah, public testnet should come out in a couple of weeks, which I'm pretty excited for. And then we are locking in our mainnet timeline for basically like end of Feb. So I'm really hoping like once all the audits are done, yeah, we should be out on mainnet before end of Q1, which I think is pretty exciting.
Awesome. Great to hear. Well,
Yeah.
look, thanks for coming on the show. Omar, thanks for being here. I know you guys are, I guess it's morning your time. So have a good
Yeah.
day.
Midday, yeah.
Really appreciate you guys coming on, and everybody who tuned in. Thanks. Please share the link in the live stream with other folks so they can catch up on everything we're doing. And you can go to my YouTube channel, which is Index Studios. It's called the Index Podcast on YouTube. If you want to catch up on like the stuff we did this morning or anything else that we've live streamed in the past. Yeah, have a good rest of your day, guys, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Perfect. Thanks for your time, Alex. All the best, and see you, Omar. Bye.
Awesome, guys. I paused it.